Make sure this is turned up. All right. Good morning. A little late on this one, given that it's Monday now, but this is going to be kind of just a weekly prep for the 20th of April here. So let me just get this link, drop it in the Discord. Do this real quick. Perfect. Process. Not sure why it's doing that. Weird. All right. Yo, what's good, Hayden? I'll just wait. I mean, I don't even think the server's over 1,000 members now. If I ping everybody, it only pings people who are online, so I can't even like ping everybody that were live here, which is fine. That's fine with me. So I tried picking the free member role. I don't know if that even does anything, to be honest with you, but that's fine either way. I'll get this going. It's not a huge deal. All right, but anyways, hope everybody had a great weekend. Let's get started on Bitcoin here. Just walk through this. Try to make sure my mic is a bit louder. All right, so recapping kind of last week, we opened up, I think, right here. So more or less, let's just look at it this way. All right, so more or less, we had 9 weeks of value built out here. We put time and space in above that level, kind of a larger rounded retest of the 9 week high, which is the gray box or this gray line, more or less. This is the time value high. This is the volume one. Then from there, we kind of put in poor lows here, but we're able to trade up. So we ultimately held on the retest, led to continuous imbalance. We traded back up into this older 2 day composite. From there, we built out 3 days of balance. If we recap a little bit more, right? Upon building up these days, we got a rotation back into what is now the 3 day high, a large flush in positioning, and ultimately we traded up from there, found acceptance above, and we traded into this older 4 day composite back from the beginning of February. From there, we kind of capped this high volume node, which is also the 4 day time point of control. So that's basically where we tagged there. And then from there, we started to break down. Following that, we shifted back inside of that 3 day composite traverse value. So at that point, we're rotational. Retested there, didn't rotate back to Val, and then we found acceptance above that level now, right? So time and space, that could have been an entry there. Same with this one. This was super clean, although it's this super aggressive move is now being retraced here. So maybe we just filled this gap in and then trade up. I don't really know. I would have loved to have longed here for sure, but I just wasn't on my PC. I've just been busy this morning. So let's look at a VWAP perspective, and then we'll kind of go over, what I'm looking at going into the week. So yearly value, I mean, more or less, this would be kind of the first, time we've actually put, found acceptance above yearly VWAP, I should say. So rotational in the lower half of value, right? Val has simply been support. Sorry, VWAP has been resistance, right? Found acceptance above there. Obviously, that's where we capped last week. And lower time frame looks like we got kind of a retest there. So maybe we trade up, but nonetheless, we're really just rotational in the lower half, right? So if we do continue to trade up, then I would, that leaves the door open for the full move through yearly value up towards 84, 85K. Previous quarter value is basically exactly the same. Developing quarter is the same as monthly right now, so I'll get to that in a second. But same thing, rotation on the lower half of previous quarter value, right? So that's what this box is. So exactly the same thing as yearly, more or less. From there, we'll go over to monthly. Let's just break this down. So where did we trade from last week? All right, so last week we kind of shifted back inside of previous month value. Didn't tag VWAP or continue to break down. Obviously, we bottomed and we traded up. And then throughout the whole week, we remained imbalanced up on developing month value. Remained there. And more or less, we haven't really shown acceptance yet. So as much as we did kind of see daylight between value area high and where price put in a low here, this retest, whatever this even was, probably should have traded down if we were going to. So really, I would say this is still imbalance up as much as it's kind of dipping in. Everything is a zone, and there needs to be context for all of this, right? So you're not just solely trading off of monthly value, for example. So right now it's just a level to work with, but should we continue to trade down, then on that basis, right, we've shifted bearish into monthly value. So monthly VWAP in previous month value high converging here certainly is a very obvious area going forward based on monthly value. But nonetheless, I would say we're still bullish against monthly value. Pretty neutral on previous quarter and yearly value. Weekly value is going to be the most important, I would say, going into this week. So, like I said, the most significant one on the chart would be yearly value. So, if we, like I said, if we truly do find acceptance above yearly VWAP and continue to trade up, that opens the door for 85. So, that's going to be an upside target going forward. As for trade locations going into the week, previous week value is going to be the most important to me. So, right, this is where we capped last week. We shifted back inside of what is now previous week value. Initially, we've been shopping around previous week VWAP. We did find acceptance underneath. Underside of retest did actually trade up, and then now this impulsive move, which was a retest of that composite value area high, is ultimately where we retest before this impulsive move up. So really, we're just rotational in previous week value with previous week VWAP, just more or less flipping either side. Really, at this point, we're just chopping around that level. So in this point, on this basis, really, these kind of levels just become support and resistance at this point. When there isn't a clear kind of AMT lens to look at these levels, you really just have to stand back and treat them as what they are, just support and resistance at this point. Value always takes precedent anyways, but nonetheless, previous week value high I think is going to be a really important level. So I think if we find acceptance above here on that basis, right, that's going to be confluent with the older 4-day composite high. So if we get back above here, that opens the door towards the full move through the 4-day composite, which we were unable to do. We capped at the point of control, so that's now been tapped. So it's less important to me anyways. And then, of course, from there onwards, right, that potentially leaves the full move through yearly value, which I mentioned before, right? That would be up towards here. So long term, that's what I'm targeting. Let's say we go lower here, because obviously I need to talk about that as well. Where are we here? Yeah, so let's say we do go lower, right? There's so much overlap here between levels. Kind of deprioritize VWAP levels when you're just in the middle of nowhere, right? They hold much more relevancy. One, if the market is just trending, and two, if they are on the edge of value. So previous week value area high, right on the edge of the 4-day val, is going to be important. Yearly VWAP is going to be usable, but not on the basis of looking at it through an AMT kind of lens. It's just going to be kind of lower time frame support and resistance, right? You can see this is obviously a level. It's also confluent with this 3-day high, the older 2-day high, which is this gray box, so on and so forth. I don't want to bore you with this. So going forward, if we do continue to break down, let's say this retest fails, there is the possibility of just a shift back into this composite, right? That can be a short, right? And the simple fact that we retested, we failed to trade higher. We're now back below all of these converging VWAP levels in that point, right? We'll be back below monthly values. So where's monthly value here? Right, so we're kind of capped at monthly value high right now, right? So that's going to be probably the most significant thing to look at going forward. So if we look at on a lower time frame, if this kind of compressive move here fails, let's say, this to me is kind of a messy retest of monthly value high. So it's really just imbalanced up, imbalanced up, imbalanced up. So say we do get this and this caps us ultimately, that to me is a shift back inside of monthly value, and that's going to be a bearish shift, which is definitely going to lead to at least 72K. So that's going to be the first thing to look at. Does it mean I'm going to short right here? No, definitely not, because the most recent shift in condition is the simple fact that we broke out of this composite and we retested here, and we went imbalanced up. Of course, we have capped here, but it did look really good for a second, so it just comes down to what happens next. So that makes sense for a short to me. Conversely, I think the safest short is going to be a shift back inside of this older 6-day composite. So that's exactly where that level is, right? This converging level. So previous month value high and monthly VWAP and the 6-day high. So obviously if we find acceptance here, you expect the full move through 6 days of value, right? And we have these poor lows as a really good target, which is confluent with the 9-week composite high. So again, from a more broader perspective, right, upon breaking from significant balance like this, if the market starts to range, this really isn't a sign of strength, right? So this could be a larger kind of failure, right? I'm just thinking all scenarios here. We just have to see what happens. A larger failure here. So if we do see acceptance back inside here, again, same kind of logic. You'd apply the full move back down to the composite lows, which again is confluent with the market still being rotational in the lower half of previous quarter value, which, this really could have just been a deviation at that point, right? Capped, capped, ultimately capped, cap downside here, cap downside here. So that points back to the same level. And on that basis, a breakdown even further is possible, in my opinion. All right. Hopefully that, I know I kind of rambled there. Hopefully that's straightforward. Say we trade higher. I think I kind of touched on that anyways, but nonetheless, short-term bearish line in the sand for me is going to be previous week value high. These kind of equal highs here, this imbalance. So I think if we get a rotation back to here, of course, this is going to be against the current condition, being that, we'd still be imbalanced up a monthly value and the other converging levels here, etc., as well as breaking out of the composite. So if we trade up to here, and let's say we rotate into previous week value high, fail to find acceptance, underside or retest, that to me is going to be a really good short. So that's my bearish line in the sand. Conversely, if we find acceptance here, right, I think it's very obvious, very straightforward, I should say, that this would constitute the full move through this older 4-day composite from February. If these load, I guess you can see it's just there's a lot of lines here, so I don't want to load. But the full move through the 4-day composite, we also have a single print up here, so that would be the first near-term target. We tag the time point of control. Maybe we see the volume point of control become a level. We just have to gauge that if this does get hit. And then conversely, like I said, the longer-term target would be the full move through yearly value up to 85K. Right? So if I go back to this chart, to here, anywhere in this zone, this imbalance, probably 84 to 86, 88, something like that. Right, bullish line in the sand this week, I would say is 72.5. This kind of area here, monthly value high, previous monthly value high, 6-day composite high. So like I said, if we do break down from this area here, it's a shift back inside of monthly value. So monthly VWAP is there. So there's your mean reversion on developing month value and the 6-day high. So if we find acceptance here, that's another bearish shift back inside of the 6-day value high, previous month value, and we're breaking below monthly VWAP. So that leaves the door, to maybe move all the way through developing month value, which, puts you towards 69K. All right, so a lot of bearish confluent references there. So short-term bullish line in the sand, 6-day high, short-term bearish line in the sand, previous week value high at 76.4. So failed break into here, short, acceptance here, long. Should we fail here, I would have definitely longed this. I just wasn't home. Or sorry, I wasn't on my PC. That would have been the long to take. Should we shift back inside of here, time and space? Probably a shorter move, rotational play at the very worst. Although I think this is absolutely the better short to take. I don't think I really want a long here, unless we see kind of a failed break into value and a reclaim. That would be a long, I would say. I don't know why I drew an arrow like that. And then these poor lows are definitely a really good target. I think the possibility of going lower is definitely there, but maybe we either sweep these lows and then reclaim like that, or we find acceptance inside of the 9-week composite, and on that basis, that would point towards much lower. Maybe monthly value, first target, as well as the full move down to like 66, yearly val, previous quarter val kind of deal. So that's what I think going forward. I know there's a lot of scribbles here. What else can I look at? Rolling VWAPs. Yeah, so the 30 and 90 are starting to converge here. The 7 has crossed over the 90, assuming we're above these VWAPs, but ultimately these are lagging indicators, so they don't confluence too much for me. Anyways, guess I can take a look at some anomalies here. I'm just going to do this all in TradingView because it's convenient. See what we have here, if anything. Not really. I mean, you could merge this if you wanted Friday, Saturday. To me, it's just isn't a very actionable reference, and one of the days is a weekend, so I don't really care to work with this in all honesty. And there's a big gap in the distribution, so that's what I expect to be resistance unless we see acceptance. This point of control, maybe short-term kind of resistance, but whatever. We may get a 2-day composite here if we continue to balance. So this is something I'd probably end up merging going forward, given it's got a pretty good distribution. A lot of overlapping levels between, around here and the older 2-day composite high. So we'll just kind of see what we get. Aside from that, not really any new anomalies I would look at marking. Kind of poor high there, but nothing really. I think if we trade up to there, it's going to get taken out anyway, so it doesn't mean anything to me, really. These are extremely poor lows here. I already have that marked. Kind of single print there, but nothing really worth noting. So not really any major anomalies to me, I don't think, that I would note here. So that's pretty much it. I don't want to ramble on here. It's kind of unfortunate I can't ping the whole server anymore. Discord doesn't let you do it once the server gets over X amount of members, so it just is what it is. Gold, I haven't looked at really. Rotational, I guess. Yeah, just rotational. All right, I'm going to end it here, do full write-up, and I hope everybody had a great weekend,